Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Town Board work session of Tuesday, June 4th. Apologies for keeping everyone waiting. The Town Board has been in executive session considering contracts, promotions, and hiring in several departments and getting advice of counsel. May I have a motion to adjourn the executive session and open the work session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So today we're going to start with a presentation from Sustainable Westchester. Newcastle is a member of Sustainable Westchester, which is a consortium of 29 municipalities participating in the Communities Choice Aggregation Program. And we have our current electric service agreement that will expire very soon, and we're looking at continuing our engagement with Sustainable Westchester as the program manager of the Communities Choice Aggregation Program. And we have Dan Bramson here from
No.
Dan,
No, close enough. You combine the two names. Dan Welch is my colleague with the Westchester Power for.
you can reintroduce yourself, here to talk to us about our options moving forward. So
Well, thank you very much, Supervisor. It's a pleasure to be with each of you. Glad to be able to spend a few minutes with the town board. My name is Noam Bramson. I'm the Executive Director of Sustainable Westchester as of January of this year, so still relatively new in the role, but of course, Newcastle's been a member of our organization and a part of this particular program for much longer than that. Ordinarily, when we give these presentations, we like to provide a broader overview of the program structure, the program purpose, provide a reintroduction to Sustainable Westchester as an organization, talk about the nature of the climate challenge that we're all confronting. However, I'm aware that Dan Welch was here quite recently. He may have covered much of that ground, so I really want to be respectful of your wishes. If you want, I can once again provide that broad overview, or if you prefer, I can focus much more narrowly and specifically on the contract options that are presented to you.
I think it would be important for the community to hear. Not everyone listened in the previous recent presentation, so I think it's never too often to hear, so that people tuning in now can have a full understanding of what we're talking about.
Okay, terrific. Well, I'm delighted to give you the full spiel on that. So, thank you for assisting with the advancement of the slides. If you can proceed with the next image. So I realize that to a significant degree I'm preaching to the choir and telling you things that you already know, but when it comes to the climate challenge, there's a certain numbness that is set in. And I think we really don't have the luxury of that feeling, because while there may have been a time when climate change appeared to be a distant prospect, it's very much here now in our communities. We know that temperature is rising more quickly in the Northeast than in much of the rest of the country. Precipitation certainly becoming more of a challenge. All of us have had the experience of meeting with families who've been flooded out for the second or third time, possessions scattered on the road. In some cases, there aren't even good engineering solutions for neighborhoods that are increasingly uninsurable and uninhabitable. Next slide, please. And obviously, that's just one aspect of the challenge that we face. And we also remember the wildfires in Quebec from last year. Eerie for all of us, for those with respiratory ailments, obviously a much more serious health challenge. That's a sign of things to come. We've got the whole subarctic boreal forest that is like a vast planetary tinderbox, and we're optimized in weather for fire. And yet, even those kinds of specific data points, I think, understate the gravity of the moment. You've probably heard that the summer of 2023 was the hottest in the last 100 years. That is a true fact. But I'd also submit to you it's the wrong way to look at it, because what we need to bear in mind is that in all likelihood, the last summer was the coolest of the next 100 years. And so our children and grandchildren are going to experience something that is unique in the geologic record dating back tens of millions of years. Climate change this rapid is really compressing millennia into decades. And all of that being visited upon a civilization built on a foundation of climatic stability. So this has got to be a sort of all hands on deck moment, and that we're meeting with a sense of urgency. And if we can move on. So I think you know the state has established ambitious goals for a clean energy transition. All of us have a role to play in meeting those goals, and the state is right to do so. Next, please. And I'm happy to say that this program we're going to discuss tonight is really a cornerstone of how we as localities and we as a region can meet this challenge. Next, please. So the basic goals of the program are threefold. It is to provide clean energy, it is to expand consumer choice, and it is to cap electricity costs. So just taking those one by one. Next slide, please. So in 2023 alone, the Westchester Power Program was responsible for mitigating, as you can see, 368,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide. I realize a number like that can seem like an abstraction. To sort of put it in perspective, if you can advance the slide, please. And again, so some equivalencies, what those tons of carbon are equal to. That's like taking nearly 88,000 cars off the road. Significant impact. Next. Or you can think of it as like planting more than 6 million trees. Next image. You know, there's efforts now to calculate the social cost of carbon, and by that metric, it's like averting nearly $48 million in costs. And next, please. I think finally, this might be the best metric for municipal leaders. I know that in Newcastle, you're doing all sorts of great things relative to the environment. Probably swapped out your street lights for LEDs. You're probably trying to green your fleet. Maybe you're weatherizing your buildings. In some cases, Sustainable Westchester may have been working with you on initiatives of that kind. So this, next slide, please. This single program, Westchester Power, has done more to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions than all of those other municipal actions combined. So really deep impact, and I think you should have a sense of pride that what you've been able to achieve by participating with your sister municipalities in a program of this kind. So next, I said the second objective is to expand consumer choice, and I think it's necessary to understand sort of how things work from a consumer perspective in the energy market. So without community choice aggregation, before this program, consumers had really two choices. One is the utility, Con Edison, which is delivering basically fossil fueled energy at a variable rate that fluctuates monthly. And if, oh, I'm sorry, if you could go back, please. It's all right. For those who wanted an alternative, you could enter into a contract with a private energy service company. That could be either fossil fueled or renewable, depending on the particular contract. That works for some people, but many others find that process difficult to navigate, and sometimes there are predatory practices involving fees and penalties. So there could be problems with ESCOs. Once you have community choice aggregation, those same two options still exist. You can still have the utility if you want it. You can still contract with an ESCO if you want it. But there's a third option, Westchester Power, which is renewable energy at a fixed rate. So it's an expanded menu of options for all the consumers within the town. Next image, please. And the last goal is to cap electricity costs. And this is really just another way of thinking about a fixed rate. We know that during the history of the program, the utility rates have varied from 4 cents up to 22 cents. Once you have a fixed rate, it's a guarantee that your rate is never going to go higher than that. So it can shield consumers from energy price spikes. And for many people, having that predictability as they do their budgeting can be an asset. Next, please. So in terms of sort of empowerment and choices that we all have, anyone who doesn't want to be a part of this program is always able to opt out at any time. It's simple to opt out. You can do so by mail before the enrollment period, and thereafter you can do so online. You can do so by email. You can do so by calling our offices. There are never any fees and penalties for opting out, and you can come and go from the program as often as you like. Next, please.
Is it the same process to opt back in, like online?
Yes. Yeah. Same and simple. And so we think, in its totality, this is a model that really empowers everybody. From an individual perspective, everyone can make the best choices for themselves from, as I said, an expanded menu of options. So whether you want to think about price or predictability or environmental action, weight those factors in whatever way makes sense to you and choose your energy supply accordingly. From a municipal perspective, it's a little bit different. You have an opportunity to demonstrate leadership and intentionality in terms of what community-wide values you want to encourage. And if clean energy uptake is among those values, if consumer protection is among those values, then Westchester Power is a really attractive way to accomplish those goals.
Those don't always have to be mutually exclusive.
Oh, for certain, no, I agree, I think in this case, they're synonymous, because they're robust consumer protections that are in place here. But thank you for pointing that out. Before I even move ahead from this, I wanna sort of acknowledge the elephant in the room, which is that the current contract has not been great from a price perspective. We're not happy about that, we know that our member municipalities are not happy about it. But there's a reason that is the case. The contract was concluded in mid-2022, just as the war in Ukraine was breaking out. At the time, energy prices were high and were predicted to go higher. That was the mainstream expectation. Instead, contrary to those forecasts, energy prices declined. And so the fixed rate that we set in that environment ended up being persistently higher than.
But no,
than the
historically,
utility rate.
that's not been the case.
Exactly right. If you look at the longer history of the program, you'll see that the years in which we've exceeded the utility price have basically been equal to the years in which we've been below the utility price. It's been a competitive product. And furthermore, if you do an apples to apples comparison of Westchester Power with the renewable supply that's been available for private ESCOs, you'll see that even in this lousy last contract, our pricing has been among the lowest available. So for anyone who wants renewable power, even in this contract, it's been quite a good deal. So as we head into 2024, we think this is a more favorable environment. Next image, please. Our indicatives today suggest that we're going to be able to come in with a lower contract price. Now, I want to be very careful to make it clear that's not a guarantee until we actually get to the bidding. We can't say that for sure, and it's possible that the energy markets will change over the course of the next month, but at least our indication right now.
When is the bidding?
The bidding will take place, we estimate, in July, and I can go through that full schedule with you in a moment. It's on one of the subsequent slides.
No, during the year where the contract was very much more expensive than people expected, do you know what percentage of Newcastle opted out? Like, did people opt
So-
out?
It's about 10%.
10% opted out.
It's varied between 9% and about 13% over time. Right now, it's at about 10%.
Right.
Thank you. I was going to say we can get that figure for you, but here we have our repository of information at the ready, so thank you for that. It's sometimes a more complicated thing to calculate than one might imagine, because actually the largest source of people leaving the program are folks who physically move out of the community. And as people move into the community, they're automatically enrolled. So there's constantly this churn, and the number of enrollments go up and down, but only a portion of that is about intentionally opting out.
But you guys collect the data on that
We
too?
did.
Okay.
We did. There's another reason why we think fixed rates may be more attractive in this next cycle, and it has to do with the way the energy markets are likely to move in 2025. Many of the dirtiest peaker plants are going to be taken offline in order for the state to meet its environmental goals. That's a good thing. And yet, it's going to take a little longer for new renewable production to fully ramp up. And so there's just going to be this window when there are supply and demand pressures, which are likely to push up the utility pricing. Again, that's not a certainty, but that is what most of the forecasters expect. And so there's a reason to believe that the fixed rate we established now in 2024 may look quite good in 2025 as utilities are pressured up. And finally, next image, please. There is an important market context related to the renewable energy certificates that we purchase. And I need to get a little bit into the weeds on this because it is quite relevant to the choice that you have to make as a town board. So just a little bit of background, and I know some of you will already be familiar, but others perhaps not. The renewable energy certificates have sort of two flavors. One of them is Tier 2. And this is mainly maintenance of legacy renewable energy generation. It's primarily hydropower. It's important, it's necessary to do. But then there's sort of a deeper green, which is Tier 1, which is supportive of newer renewable energy generation. That tends to be wind and solar. So what's happened since the last contract? Tier 2 is now in more limited supply than it was previously. That had been our exclusive purchase in prior years, was Tier 2.
So wait, so the default program was 100% tier 2.
Correct. The default you have right now is 100% tier 2. Tier 1 is now available for the first time. It was not previously available on the voluntary market for programs like Westchester Power. So what is that going to mean in terms of the offerings? Next image, please. So this is the current contract. We offer two different defaults to municipalities. One was what we called standard, which was sort of the fossil fuel mix. Only 2 of the 29 municipalities elected to do that. The other, which you have in Newcastle, is what we're sort of calling medium green. That is 100% renewable at the tier 2 level. Now, we're no longer going to be offering that standard fossil fuel mix, in part because we can't under New York State regulations, given the pricing structure, but also, as I said, only 2 municipalities wanted it, and frankly, it's inconsistent with the program goals. And so we're phasing that out. We also, next image please, are no longer able to offer that medium green as the municipal default because we can't acquire enough of the tier 2 RECs. So although that'll be available as an individual opt-up, which I'll explain in a moment, it's not available as the municipal default. What are we able to offer instead? Next image, please. So first we have what we're calling sort of light green, and this is 50% tier 2 RECs. That's the most tier 2 that we're able to offer as the default. It is down from the 100%, and so in that, from an environmental perspective, less favorable, although also likely to be less expensive. In fact, definitely will be less expensive. So that's kind of a basic offering.
So
And that-
just to be clear, that's 50% tier 2 and 50% fossil fuel.
50% utility mix, correct.
I know you don't want to say that, but that's
Yep.
what it is.
Exactly right. So better than you get if you were just from Con Ed, not as good as you have right now. So the other offering is what we're calling sort of our enhanced or our dark green. And this would be a blend of 50% tier 1 and 50% tier 2. And so we're topping back up to that 100% by integrating the tier 1s, which are now available for the first time. And what's next image, please. What's notable about that is this is actually the greenest offering we've ever been able to offer in this program, which we think is very favorable. However, I want to point out, you've probably seen this in the contract documentation, this is price dependent. We will proceed if the delta between the tier 1 and tier 2 pricing is not too large. And we think right now that we'll be able to come in under that target, but if it exceeds the target in deference to price sensitivity, we will not proceed.
What about supply and demand issues? Like and I'm sorry if this is a question, but where are we getting all of our wind energy from? And do we have enough of it if so many people wanted to opt in onto this new contract of 50/50? And then how will that affect the price?
It's by no means a stupid question. It's a logical question, and I will tell you, as a relative newcomer to this, the whole sort of structure of the energy markets has been an eye-opener to me. So that is carefully planned out by the state authorities who manage this process. And it is the reason why tier 2 RECs are now, thank you for coming. It's the reason.
Any questions to the sustainability of the budget?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
That was very helpful, by the way, contribution. So it was good to have that.
He's the resident expert.
So it's the reason why the tier 2 RECs are in shorter supply right now, because there's been a sort of calculation made that they cannot be as widely available. But the same state authorities have looked at patterns of demand and looked at the availability for tier 1 and have concluded that it can be made available on the voluntary market. And in any case, the program structure is such that once the rate is set, it is fixed, and there's no chance of it exceeding that.
And it's a yearly fixed rate?
So that's still to be determined. When we go through the bidding process, we will entertain bids of different durations so that we can see what brings in the best rate. We think, based on what we're hearing now, that a 1-year contract is most probable, but if it turns out that 18 months gets us a better rate, then we may very well go in that direction.
But
So-
then you wouldn't be protected from the changes in 2025.
Well, the contract commences in November, so
Okay,
it would
so
run
there'll be an
through
overlap.
it would run
So
through
bidding
the
is
end of
in
2025.
July, but it doesn't go into
Okay.
effect.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
battery energy storage in tier one, or battery energy?
No, not to my knowledge. Now, I caveat it because, our team is some of the most, knowledgeable people in the whole state. I'm the newbie, but I'm pretty sure it does not include battery storage, which does need
See
more
solar
broadly.
and solar and those two together.
It could be, and, your question, you're making a good point about the energy composition of the state more broadly. Battery storage is gonna have to be part of it. I think you're probably reading about the growing use of battery storage in California and how critical that is to.
But the concerns associated with lithium batteries are really not well understood.
Yes, that's a broader conversation that needs to occur, and I think there's space for thinking about model ordinances, thinking about public education, distinguishing between different types of batteries, different sizes of batteries, what are appropriate siting locations, what are not appropriate siting locations. It's outside the scope of this particular decision, but certainly of important things raised.
So can I just ask a question about the contract and how that works for like practical purposes for the residents? When the new contract starts in November, everyone opts back into whatever or not opts, but is placed back into our default. And then if they had opted out, say, for this contract, they have to,
No, once you opt out, you're out.
okay,
Unless you opt in, unless you affirmatively opt in.
okay, so it's continuous from contract
So
to contract.
that is my understanding. I'll confirm that. If I'm wrong, I'll get back to you and
Okay.
correct
I
that.
would think that if it's that household, if someone moves, then the new residents
That's
come
correct.
in under the default.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
But the individuals who opt out are always opted out.
That is my understanding.
Right.
Is it the individual, or the combination of that the owner and address? Like say you move within town, and you were opted out, would you end up opting? That's a great question for me, Holly.
I think that would be a
Thank you for
combination.
clarifying.
You're opted in, right?
Yeah.
So you'll be in.
I don't think the program would recognize that it was someone who lived in a house in town.
So we're deeper in the weeds than I'm
Yeah.
able to answer. I can tell you that if Dan Welsh, our program director, was sitting here, he would answer you in a heartbeat, so I regret that I'm a poor substitute for it. But it all likelihood has to do with the mechanism through which the utility tracks the account.
So they track, it keys on the Con Ed account number. When you opt in or opt out, that's what it's asking for, so.
It makes sense, otherwise the system would not be able to
So if you
determine all
transfer
of
your
this.
account to
Right.
another
I
address,
suppose if
it
you have
would-
the same
yes,
account number, then
It's
you
account
would
number.
probably maintain, yeah.
Okay, so your decision
So you're.
in Newcastle
out
is your
as follows
decision
you.
until you change it yourself.
Account.
Okay,
So, and you would not be enrolled if you've opted out. If you had chosen to contract with a private ESCO, you're also not enrolled. Also, for low-income households that are entitled to utility assistance such as heat, those are also not enrolled in the program. Under state rules, they can only be enrolled if it provides guaranteed savings, which a program model like this is by definition not able to provide.
And would that be for AFFH housing?
Yeah.
Or is
Depends
it
on level.
income?
Yeah,
is
it depends on
income
whether people are receiving forms of utility financial assistance.
related? Okay.
Sort of putting this all together in terms of what it means for your options. So let me sort of walk you through this. There are basically three things you can do. Option one is to exit the program. Say you don't want to be part of Westchester Power anymore. In that case, Con Edison, once again, becomes your municipal default. And that's it.
Move on option.
Yeah, skip
So what a wise group. So option two is to say we want to continue in the program and we want to establish as our default the sort of light green, the 50% tier 2 RECs. In that scenario, individuals can choose to opt up to the medium green, which is the current default, 100% tier 2. That's the only iteration in which that 100% tier 2 would be available as an opt up. Or again, opt out of the program entirely and go back to the utility. Option three, as you can see, is to set the dark green as your municipal default. In that scenario, individuals can opt down to light green if they want to have some savings, but some renewability. And again, can opt out of the program entirely. Next image, just as a reminder, that third option is dependent on the tier 1 costs coming in with an expectation. So if you elect option 3, but the tier one costs end up being more expensive, then we're back to option two. So you'll automatically return to.
And then the only option is in or out as a community. If
Correct,
that happens.
correct.
And you can't know yet what the cost difference per, household, I guess it depends how much they use, but would be between 3 and 2?
I can give you some estimates based on current indicatives, heavily caveated again. That it's not a guarantee that's what's gonna come in. We always have some reluctance to give numbers because sometimes people interpret that as a commitment, but instead, this is just our best guess based on indicators right now. So the underlying electric supply without renewable energy certificates, so just fossil fuel, we estimate will come in at between 10 and 10.5 cents per kilowatt hour. That compares to about 13.5 cents today, so it's significantly less. The 50% tier two, that is the sort of the light green, we estimate would come in at between 11.5 and 12 cents. The medium green, the 100% tier two, which is available as an individual opt-up, we think would come in between 12.5 and 13 cents. And the dark green we think would come in between 13 and 13.5 cents. All of those are considerably lower than the default rate today. So relative to the current contract, they would represent savings, decrease. So again, we hope that holds. It is a reason to move quickly because we want to take advantage of what we perceive to be a sort of a favorable pricing structure. And so one other thing, just to further complicate already complicated matter, we've given, if you want to go with option 3, we've given you kind of 2 ways to do it. One is to essentially say we shall do this if the target price meets the threshold. The other is to say we may approve it. You're going to entrust your chief elected, your chief administrator, to sign a revised contract on your behalf, and you would do that after all the pricing is resolved. If you wanted to kind of see all that laid out before you fully sign on the dotted line. What we want to avoid is coming back to you for a second legislative act of the town board, because we realize that's burdensome for you, and we don't want to run the risk of some scheduling snafu interfering with a critical path of approvals.
That's the option 2.
No, option
Any
2
of
is
the
actually sort of a very simple one.
Yeah.
You're just saying, we want light green, the tier 1 pricing doesn't matter, over and
There's
done.
no option to go to the dark green.
No,
If you
there-
pick option, I thought there was.
So
I thought there was.
if you pick option 2, the only way to then go up to option 3 is through a contract amendment that would have to be adopted by the full board. So we have to come back to the board for a secondary legislative action. It's not impossible to do that.
That's what I thought you were talking about.
So I'm sorry if I wasn't
No,
so we don't recommend that as an approach because of the timing risks associated with it. If you think that you want that dark green option as your municipal default, if you want to take the sort of maximal environmental position, then our recommendation is to do either that 3A or 3B. 3A is the simplest one. You act now. If the pricing comes in under target, you're done. 3B has that additional step of a contract amendment that will be signed by your chief administrator or your chief elected. And presumably that would follow some informal consultation with the board, and then you can proceed on that basis.
What's the advantage of 3A over 3B? Why would one want to do 3A as opposed to
Just
having a further discussion, establishing, and either way, the price, the delta has to be the same.
correct,
Right.
correct. I think just simplicity and having it over and done with. But we're by no means, pardon?
3A being certainty.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
3B is the same, except I suppose the town supervisor would decide after having, well,
Yeah.
would have a conversation with the town board.
Exactly.
The board would agree.
So, I mean, we wanted to
But
just,
what's happening would be made clear to our community further ahead of time, instead of having to wait until, like, there's another step between you find out the answer on 3 about the pricing target, right?
yeah, so if we can go on to the next.
Well, I'm not sure that may be less transparent, 3A. because then we go automatically to the dark green without any discussion.
It seems like it might be more. I know that we're gonna pick the
We can do
greenest
it.
possible option for default, no matter what.
Right, but we won't have the price.
So
But we're not gonna have
But
the
he's
price
saying
no matter
it's going
what.
to be less, he's
Right.
saying, you're saying that it's going to be less than it has
The question
been.
is how much less?
Yeah.
No, but if we go up to the dark green, it will be more.
More than
I
what?
thought
More than
you
the,
said it would be
More than the
less.
light green.
That's
Well,
what
that I
more than
understand.
the
Light
option two.
green.
But that I
But
understand, but
less
less than
than-
now.
In all likelihood, again, I would caveat any prediction about future pricing,
I
it's not a
think
guarantee.
I mean,
what's important
whatever
too
we
is
do will be
understanding.
less.
No, I'm saying
If-
that,
I'm saying the great probability is it'll be less, the indicatives we have today say it will be less, but I just don't wanna overpromise because there's an inherent uncertainty whenever you're predicting the
And if
future
you
of an energy
choose
market.
3A, you're committed to whatever it comes out as.
As long as the delta between tier 1 and tier 2 is
Right.
sufficiently
and
small.
if it's not, then you.
And do we?
And we'll know what that delta needs to be.
Yes, the delta would be a half cent price difference between the dark green and the medium green option. So if you
That or
imagine
less.
your current default, which is 100% tier 2, and you think about the blended default, 50% tier 1 and 50% tier 2, the price differential was a half cent or less. That would be the trigger.
So I know when I come home in the evening, I don't curse my family, but every darn light is on in the house, no matter what, even if it's the daytime. So it's hard to judge what, a kilowatt hour or what means to a particular average family, but did you have it here? I didn't see it, but if I did, I apologize. The average differential, like what practically speaking, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, what does it mean if it's the green, the dark green's more expensive? If then it turns out to be, again, average household uses X, it turns out to be $100 on the year, I'm totally making up, that's something that's probably absorbable. If it turns out to be $1,000 on the year, which it probably isn't, that's not necessarily absorbable.
But our residents can always make the choice.
I get that, but to educate people, understand,
But
I would like to know what we're talking about as
So-
best we can.
Rather than pulling a number out of the air, what I'd like to do is calculate something a little bit more precise and share it with you
I think that'd be
tomorrow.
valuable,
Yeah,
That would
so-
be
because when people hear more expensive, then they, more expensive,
And
what does
just
it mean?
Piggyback, opting out can happen month to month, right?
Anytime you want.
Okay.
You can opt out and opt back
Back
in
in,
and.
right,
back
there's
in.
no strings attached, you can opt out at any point.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, which is a critical component of the
Right.
program. So I mean, I
How
realize,
fast does it turn around actually when somebody opts out?
I think it's probably by the next billing cycle. I would need to confirm the exact.
My
actually-
concern would be if it's longer, I guess.
So I actually
the
looked
next
up and I
month.
had a resident ask me the last couple of days about it, and so I went online and looked up the process of opting in and out, and it says 1 to 2 billing cycles from the time that you.
So I realized that for whatever reason, the formatting on this particular slide did not translate, and so it's actually makes things more confusing rather than less, but essentially, what we're asking you to do and hope you will consider doing is as soon as possible to make a decision on the memorandum of understanding, so that we can trigger the process of entertaining bids. Again, that does require you to decide, do you want light green as your default, or do you want dark green through one of those two mechanisms?
When practically speaking, do you really need this?
There's no sort of imminent drop dead date.
Today, 2 weeks?
I mean, if you can do it within the next week or so, we would be thrilled.
We'll have a meeting, another meeting next week.
And that would be great, if you could do it by then. And certainly, by then, we'll be able to answer for you the questions you posed that I wasn't able to answer in the moment, so you'll have all that
And
information.
it's at that point that we pick our option.
Exactly. And again, remember, if you choose 3B, then you're signaling we want dark green, but you still have that kind of final circuit breaker when all the pricing is laid in front of you.
Right.
You can decide at that point whether you want to.
What if at that point we were like, now we wanna go back to option 2?
That you're,
That's
that's
fine?
fine, that's,
Okay.
you can do that,
Right.
you can do that. You're not committed to it, you would be committed to the program as a whole, you would be committed to option
I don't
2.
think that's an issue.
Right.
So,
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I think that's That's it for the substantive presentation. I will spare you the rousing summation because I think you already are on board with
You mean the
with
do
some
all the
Mohammed
good
action.
you can. Do all the good you can.
Exactly.
Et
Do all the
cetera.
good you can.
Yes.
John Wesley. I'm not
I
an Methodist, but I
appreciate
like
that.
to quote John Wesley. So.
Thank you.
But we agree.
Thank you. I really a pleasure spending time with you, and thank you for good questions. I'm sorry that there were some I wasn't able to answer, but we'll.
It's noted.
We'll
I think,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you
This
so
is
much.
really clear.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very
Very
much.
helpful,
I
actually.
think your presentation was really clear,
It was.
with some,
Schwartz, thank you
you
very
know,
much.
complicated options,
Well,
pretty easy to follow.
that feedback actually means a lot to us because as you can imagine, we spend a fair amount of time trying to think about how to present this and visualize it because we recognize there is some undesirable complexity here. So the fact that you say that is meaningful to me and the team, and I will certainly share that with us.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank
thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you
Thanks.
too, thank you.
Thank you. Good seeing you. Thank you.
Bye.
She waved.
All right, we have
So do we wanna have any further discussion amongst ourselves, or do we wanna mull it over and discuss next week? I think we're all committed to the program. And I think it's important to let people know, let our residents know what the process is for opting out and opting in. And really making sure that as many
They
people know about it as possible.
Yeah, 'cause I know
And,
I know they send letters, but honestly, I don't think that it's as clear and straightforward as
So we can
We can
word,
maybe
we can
do that.
What's letters
wordsmith,
now, I'm constantly just
Yeah.
trashing them.
And maybe the sustainability advisory board might be interested in helping put together,
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
for what it's worth, I'd also like to hear from the SAB, about, the options, how they feel about it. I mean, I can guess how they do, but is there a threshold where they would be concerned about the price? Would be important for me to hear.
I don't see the harm in 3Ds. I don't see the drawbacks.
Flexible and it's
And we can do anything we want with it.
most
Exactly.
As long,
I'm
as
inclined
people know they can opt out, that
Yeah,
we really made it an effort in conveying that information, that's the only
I
thing.
think a
I
lot
don't
of
want
people
people.
wanna opt out this most recent year because of
Yes,
the cost.
yes,
But I also
yes.
think that's important for people to understand what that kilowatt hour really means, or whatever.
I also,
But
what
also- but
does
also-
half a
also
cent
to
per
understand-
kilowatt mean to
but
your
also
actual
to understand
cost?
that the cost could go up.
True,
And
but you
that
could at least
this
have
is
that, you could
likely,
visualize it, you
right.
could triple it.
I think that's the idea, is to understand, what the magnitude of change could be.
Yeah,
At least I know the
Yeah.
threshold, I know that 500 may be too much for one person, 300 may be too much for another, but they can see if it's 100 now, even if it doubles or triples, it'll still be okay. Take it up.
And option 2 is less green than what we currently have. So I think,
Yeah,
can
if
we
we,
agree that we would go with option 3? Is everyone
I'm comfortable with that.
more or less on board with that?
I am,
And I mean, we have a week to think.
Yeah.
But
I think
the
that there's
the 3D
plenty
is
of
sounding pretty good.
mechanisms and safety
Yeah.
nets in place that people can decide what they, I'm just about choice, people have choice, that's it.
yeah, I mean,
Okay,
this
very
program
good.
seems to be like the best of both worlds. We can make a green decision as a community, and then everyone has the power
Yep.
to manage their own personal.
It's really well thought out.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're gonna move on, let's see.
Administrative items?
Yeah, Rob,
Not many things, we have a retroactive payment of claims that was dated May 30th. And we have the authorization to approve price extension for the DPW water maintenance materials for the cleaning system, 2024.
okay, do you wanna go over the proposed actions?
Yep, it's the retroactive payment of claims. We had the authorization to promote for DPW we discussed earlier. The authorization to post and hire the laborer position. The authorization to hire the summer intern at the Millwood Water Treatment Plant. The authorization to accept the retirement of a police officer. The authorization to waive the registration fee for the 2 summer camp CITs, and the authorization to accept the resignation from the planning board.
Alright,
I just wanted to go quickly.
you wanna go, you
Go
wanna start?
ahead, Jeremy.
I move to retroactively approve the payment of claims amount of $601,657.34 listed on the summary AP check register detail voucher detail report dated May 30th, 2024. Checks were printed and distributed to each claimant listed on Thursday, May 30th of this fiscal year.
Second. All in favor?
Hi, I move to authorize promotion of Jonathan Doyle from the position of labor to the position of motor equipment operator in the Department of Public Works Highway Unit at the annual salary of $75,250.89 effective June 10th, 2024.
Second. All in favor?
Move to authorize the posting of hiring division of labor within the Department of Public Works Highway Unit. The annual salary range from $51,246.97 to $70,377.72.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, stop to avoid any further anxiety, I will have Jen.
I move to authorize
I said to avoid.
the hiring of Andrew Sands, who's a lovely young man, to serve as the recipient of the 2024 Mike Martis Summer Intern at the Millwood Water Treatment Plant at the rate of $16 per hour, of which Veolia will pay for 20 hours of the 40-hour work week effective June 10th, 2024 through August 23rd, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move to accept the retirement of Brian Bruno from the position of sergeant within the Newcastle Police Department effective May 31st, 2024. The town would like to thank Sergeant Bruno for his 21 years of dedicated service.
Second.
Yes, thank you to Sergeant Bruno for all those years, we appreciate it.
I also want to say, Brian has always been a gentleman, he's always been responsive, he's always been kind, he was a great asset to the town, so he will certainly be missed.
Absolutely.
I second that.
Second all of it.
Alright, all in favor?
Aye.
Holly?
I move to authorize the Recreation and Parks Department to waive the fees of $840 per child for 2 children to attend the 2024 Summer Campus Counselors in Training in accordance with the Town of Newcastle application for financial assistance.
Second.
All in favor?
I move
There's one more.
I move to accept the resignation of Thomas Curley from the position of member of the Planning Board effective June 3rd, 2024. The town would like to thank Tom for his service.
Second.
I just want to express my great appreciation for Tom and all that he's done for our town on the planning board, improving many projects. So Tom, I wish you a lot of good luck in your free time, and thank you so much for your service to our town.
Great, we consider Tom, I've worked with Tom since I started on the board, Tom has really been a great asset. Sometimes agree, sometimes disagree, but he gives his heart and soul. Certainly cares a lot about this town, it's been great, and we're grateful for his service, sincerely, thank you so much, Tom.
All in favor?
Aye.
Adjournment?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you everyone and good night.
Thank you.